Hi, my name is Emma, and I'm going to be talking about the graduate school application process as part of the Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics Graduate School admissions series. So, first, I want to introduce myself more. I'm originally from Park City, Utah. I just graduated from Princeton University with a degree in astrophysics, and I was a Brooke Owens Fellow in the class of 2018, working in Washington, D.C. at Bryce Space and Technology. This fall, I'll be starting a PhD in astrophysics at Yale. I went through the graduate application process this past fall, and so I'm fresh out of the process, and I'm going to be coming at it from the perspective of the natural sciences as opposed to engineering. So when I was applying to only PhD programs that incorporated masters as part of the process, as opposed to an independent master's program that is, I believe, to be more common in engineering. So I'll be coming at it from the perspective of the natural sciences PhD. So just as a disclaimer, that may be different than some other graduate admissions processes. I'm going to start with a fact that is a problem and that is one that needs to be addressed, but that impacts the application process because of its existence. So the fact is that the graduate application system is really biased, and it's not anywhere near where it should be in relation to diversity and equity. There are lots of barriers to entry, including the GRE and the culture of departments that has been cultivated for years and years and is slow to change. But don't let that discourage you from graduate school, because there are silver linings to that fact, and there are ways that that fact can be used to find the departments that are really places that are making changes and building a new culture and trying to take down those barriers. And that can help make the graduate application process smoother, actually. So the first place that that matters is in making your list of schools. It can be rather daunting to pick which number of schools you should apply to. For programs in astrophysics and physics, the general recommended number is between 10 to 15 schools, which is a very large number, and it means that you have to do a lot of research. So the first thing that I recommend when making a list of schools to apply to is to look at places that do research you're interested in, because that is the key thing to start, is that you need to be at a place where the research that you're going to be doing is going to interest you, because you're going to be doing that research for a substantial portion of time. I would recommend waiting to look at things like weather, city, cost of living, until you know more about what the stipend is going to be and what the graduate um, school and student culture is like. So waiting to make those decisions until after you've applied can leave more doors open. So if you first focus on what research you're interested in and what professors you would enjoy working with, do some Googling, try and find out which professors, read some papers, and then keep track of all of this in a spreadsheet, because that spreadsheet can then be your reference guide as you write your personal statements later on in the process. I'm happy to share a template spreadsheet that for what I use to help keep track of everything, because there are a lot of deadlines and different little components to all the applications, and it can be really hard to keep track of all of that, and you don't want to drop a ball that isn't bouncy. So I definitely recommend making a spreadsheet. And also, the cost of applications can be pretty expensive. So there are a lot of fee waivers that you can get from most schools that mean that the application process becomes a lot more accessible. So looking for schools where the fee waiver is um, present, people talk about it, that's a sign of a school that has a good culture, in my opinion, because it means that they're aware of those barriers to entry. The other thing to do is to look at the requirements for each school. So which ones have requirements about the GRE and which ones require the things like the physics subject test. So at least for Astro, a lot of programs used to require this additional physics test. And it's been proven that that test only correlates with being white and male and has absolutely no correlation with success in graduate school. So one of the things that I did when I was picking my schools was I used the fact that the graduate application process used to be really biased toward, and is still in a lot of ways, toward white males. But you can use that fact to look at departments that have gotten rid of that test, because that's a good sign that they're aware and that they're working to make changes. So I exclusively applied to schools that did not require it, or that at least made that test optional. And now, especially with COVID, a lot of places are getting rid of the GRE. So I definitely recommend keeping a close eye on what the requirements are, because that can give you a really good feel very early on about how aware the department is about diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and what steps they're taking immediately and that are concrete steps toward lowering the barriers to entry for graduate school to make graduate schools reflect the real world. The next step is to take the GRE. Based on how much time you have left, schedule your GRE test and then make a timeline for studying that fits and stick to that timeline. The GRE is not a test of how smart you are, it's a test of how well you can take the test. So you should use a study book, which can be found either free online through ETS on their website. They have free GRE study materials, and often libraries will keep a stock of study books that you can use. And again, for the GRE, look for the fee waivers, because the test can be expensive, but a lot of schools and also through the ETS, you can get fee waivers for it, which helps to make it a more accessible option. When you're studying, definitely try and mimic the test environment. This environment is changing due to COVID. A lot of tests are being taken online, although some in-person testing centers are opening up again. So find out what you'll be taking it in and try and mimic that when you're studying. The GRE is unique, well, not unique, but it's different than a lot of tests in that it's online. So you're going to want on a computer, so you're going to want to practice, at least do one practice test on a computer so that you know what that is going to feel like come test day. Read the instructions, because those are things that don't change, so that you don't have to spend time doing that on test day. And it'll alleviate stress as you go through the process, because then you can focus on just taking the test and getting it done. After those steps are done, then you can shift focus over entirely into the personal statement, which is a big component of your process and for application to graduate school. The personal statement for graduate school is very different than undergraduate essays. There was a lot of emphasis for undergraduate essays that you don't want to copy and paste and that schools will know. And that's different for graduate school, because in a lot of ways you're telling the same story for every school. And unless they have a very specific prompt, you can use the same essay base and just change even a paragraph about the school, so you make it specific to that school and change the name in the first few sentences. And that's very acceptable to do, especially because the number of schools that you'll be applying to will likely be pretty high. Although the disclaimer, that's not always true. But if it is high, then this is a tip that can really help alleviate stress, so that you're not writing 15 different essays. Instead, you can write one and write 15 different bottom paragraphs. In those personal statements, you want to explain your why and your path to graduate school. So you want to talk about how you made the decision to commit to graduate school, because it is a commitment, and they want to see that you are committed to following through on that process. So, for example, I was able to use my experience through the Brooke Owens Fellowship and say that I tried working in industry, and I decided that I really wanted to go and get a graduate degree and continue the research. And then that leaves the door open to enter industry again later on. But it was a way for me to show that I really have settled on this. I've tried other options, and I know that this is what I want. So, find an experience or a moment that you can use to show the graduate schools that you really are committed to the program and you really want to follow through and do the research. In this personal statement, you want to showcase your skills that will be applicable to graduate school, show resource use, time management skills, communication skills, which are essential. And through the personal statement, you're demonstrating your writing skills, which are essential also in graduate school if you're going to be publishing papers. And one of the things that you definitely want to do as part of this process is to edit many times. Send it to a professor, send it to a fellow graduate student, and send it to a graduate student, and send it to a fellow undergraduate, because then you get different perspectives that can all help you to make sure that the essay comes out the best way possible. There are far too many cases of people just missing small typos and things like that that can look really badly in the application process. So have other eyes on it, because it's much better to have the low stakes set of eyes look at it and edit it than have it impact in the application process. And if you have any questions or want another set of eyes on personal statements, I am more than happy to reach out. My contact information is on the last slide of this. You can also reach out to me through social media, and I would be happy to look at a personal statement. So after the personal statement is done and you're in, then what? Well, at least for Astro, what we do is you get flown to the different places and you get to visit the departments, which is a really fun experience because now you're all these places that you know do research that you want. So then you get to look at things like what are the activities in the area? What is the cost of living? How much healthcare does the school cover? What is their stipend like? Can I live on that? What is the cost of housing? Is there nice housing? What is the weather? Can I live in this climate for a couple of years? So in this case, they've picked you, and now they want you to pick them. So you have a position of power in this case because you're trying to decide which one is the best fit for you. So on these visits, definitely remember that and remember that the professors picked you to be there. So now they want you to pick them. So ask all sorts of questions when you meet with professors and potential research advisors. See if you think that they would be a good fit. Ask about their advising style. Ask about coursework from the graduate students that are there. Um, and also ask the hard questions. We live in a world where things such as sexual harassment are far too common. So ask the students in the department if there are things that you should be concerned about, because more often than not, they will answer you quite honestly, and those can be very important to decision making. Um, so ask all the questions, even the uncomfortable ones, but also ask the happy questions about what are the activities you do outside of your graduate work and what are the coolest things to do in the area, what is the social life in the department like, because all of those things now can make a decision if you're into places that all have research that you like. The other component of the application process that I didn't really talk about in this presentation, but that I'll just note here, are the letters of recommendation. They're different for each kind of program in terms of the number that they want, but the key is to make sure that you pick people who you know can speak highly of you and do so fervently and honestly. Usually professors will tell you if they can't write a letter like that, and sometimes if you're worried, ask them point blank because then you'll know and you'll be able to tell if the letter that they're going to give you is going to be strong. Because letters of recommendation matter a lot in graduate application processes because the professors all know each other. So they trust the opinions of one another for the most part, minus any drama between professors. But do pick people who you have worked closely with or developed a relationship with, as that will be important to the application process. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. My email is here, and I'm Exoplanet Emma on Twitter and Instagram, and I would be more than happy to talk if there are other questions. And I thank the panel organizers for doing this great event, and I wish everyone the best of luck and to stay healthy.